Hey, everybody, welcome to Dangerous Ideas. The Epstein story just gets more and more insane by the minute, and I'm enjoying talking about it with y'all. Y'all, that's right. Grew up in Richmond, Virginia. Hello, everybody. Thanks for leaving comments and thumbs up, all that stuff, even though we are very suppressed. And, I kind of I've given up in a lot of ways of like trying to play to the algorithm. It's like, yeah, the title just says Epstein's killer in it. Like, I don't know how to play the game any longer. But okay, I'm going to show a video of, it seems to be a flash, a little flash of what very well might have been Epstein's killer when he was in prison. But perhaps even more important than just what we see in that video, which again, I'll show in a second, is what it says about the cover-up. The fact that the FBI and the Department of Justice have never mentioned that there is clearly a human being walking towards Epstein's cell around the time he is killed. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to some more on Trump, how much Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files. We're going to get to RFK saying some more utterly insane shit. And yeah, there's a lot of it, a lot of stuff going down. So please click thumbs up, share, all those good things. By the way, I am sorry that Eleanor Goldfield is not here today. Sometimes the schedules just don't work out, but she will be back soon. Anyway, let's start with this. So perhaps you know, or you've seen me cover before, that it's like 5 of the 7 cameras or 7 of the 9 cameras or whatever that were supposed to be filming in and around Epstein's cell didn't work. So there's ultimately 2 cameras, only one of which actually shows, and it only shows it by like a little sliver. You can see maybe that you could see where it would go to Epstein's cell. And they are now, this is from, and there's new documents also released about this realization, I guess we'll call it. But first, let me show the video. This is CBS News, showed this as well yesterday or recently, a few days ago. But this shows, video. Oh no, I'm going to turn the audio off. So it's hard to see unless you really, let me make sure this is as big as I can make it on your screen. It's hard to see unless you really pay attention, but basically, if you see where the blue trash can is, sorry for those of you on the podcast, listening to the podcast, I know this isn't helpful to you. To the right of the blue trash can, up above it, is where the stairwell would be to Epstein's tier or whatever, the area where his cell is. And you clearly see a orange movement walking up those stairs. Now, it is important that it's orange because that is the color of the jumpsuit for these prisons in Manhattan. That is the color of the prison outfit, is bright orange. So you see this bright orange thing clearly moving up those stairs. And many people have pointed out that if you wanted to hide from this camera, you could stick to the right of those stairs and not be seen by this camera that is supposedly filming outside of Epstein's cell. Now, maybe this guy or girl, even though men commit whatever, 90% of all murders, but and it was a male prison. There were female guards though. But now maybe this person was doing that, trying to stick to the right side, and therefore that's what part of why you only see this little orange streak go up the screen as they enter the cell. But there's kind of more important things or other important things about this video, such as the fact that it is talked about and misrepresented in the now revealed documents of the FBI and Department of Justice investigation into what happened to Epstein. Newly released Department of Justice documents show that investigators reviewing surveillance footage from the night of Epstein's death observed an orange-colored shape moving up the staircase at 10:39 p.m. The inspector general logs it as an officer carrying orange linen or bedding, noting it in their final report as an unidentified corrections officer. It's also important that this is a person in orange. I'll get to why they're pretty certain this was not someone carrying orange jump, like cleaning the laundry in a moment. But it's also important that it was someone probably wearing orange because they were either pretending to be a prisoner or they were a prisoner. And I think it's worthy of note that uh, prison when someone wants someone dead in a prison, they often get a prisoner to do it. There are ways to, and there are often prisoners who do that kind of thing. There are often ways to get those messages and those offers to prisoners, and then the prisoners carry out the murder. The inspector general logs, I did that, linen or bedding. So at 22:39, you see a flash of orange can be seen going up the stairs of the tier. Inmates are currently on lockdown. It is possible someone is carrying inmate linen or bedding up the stairs. The final report by the inspector general stated approximately 10:39 unidentified CO. So now they've gone from thinking it could be a corrections officer to it absolutely is a corrections officer. Now, part of the reason they have to do that is because if it were to be an inmate during a lockdown, well, that's already a crazy breach of protocol and everything else to have an inmate walking around at an hour that's supposed to be locked down. So they don't want to have, because then you're adding another aspect to this investigation. Holy shit, there was an inmate wandering around. So instead, they have to pretend this was a corrections officer. Well, how do you pretend as a corrections officer if this person's wearing orange? Because corrections officer wouldn't be wearing orange. Well, you say they were carrying around all the orange uniforms at 10:40 at night. But as we'll learn in a moment, that is ridiculous. Official reviews of Epstein's death make no mention of the figure in orange, and later pronouncements from authorities, including the Attorney General at the time, Bill Barr, were that no one entered Epstein's housing tier the night of his death. So literally they have said no one entered it. And absolutely they knew that someone entered it because they had video of someone, unless it's an orange raccoon that got loose in the cell, in the tier, and was running around. There's absolutely someone walking up those stairs. Last summer, in an interview on Fox News, the FBI director, Dan Bongino, said, "There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it." And that is what we call a lying liar, sir. That is a straight up big old lie. It's clear as day that he was not alone to some degree. Now, they could come up with some excuse and say, oh, yeah, I was the corrections officer. We have proof. They walked by. They were holding linens, blah, 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 and say he had nothing to do with Epstein's death. Okay, but you aren't saying that. You're saying, at least in that interview, you're saying absolutely no one there. The staircase leading to his cell tier was captured by the only camera known to have been recording that night. So I think there was one other, but this is the only one that has view of anywhere around Epstein's actual cell. So you also have to ask the question. Here's, by the way, a blown up image of the orange. But to me, the orange flash in the still image doesn't do it justice, because what you can see in the moving image is that it's clearly someone walking. It's not like a random glint off a something shiny. Anyway, so yes, there was one camera that showed anything around Epstein's tier. Now, what are the odds all those cameras malfunction at once? You want to take betting odds on that, or are turned off? Among those interviewed, now here's how we know this was not someone carrying linens, almost definitely. Among those interviewed were the two corrections officers assigned to the unit that night, Tova Noel and Guido. That's not a name. Guido Bonhomme, a materials handler who had not previously been publicly identified. According to Noel's account, Bonhomme had been working multiple consecutive shifts and slept while on duty for a period between 10 and midnight. And we've all joked about this before. Oh, both the guards decided to go to sleep all night. Interesting, that is. Investigators also questioned Noel about an unexplained change in the recorded number of inmates in that housing unit. It went from 73 to 72. So someone died or disappeared for a few hours from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Noel says they must have been mistaken because they don't recall any change in number. Bonhomme told investigators he did not remember remember the period between 10 p.m. and midnight. He added that a jail employee entering a tier alone would have violated policy. All right, so even if this is a jail employee and not a prisoner, they're still violating policy. A separate internal presentation included in the document release described a corrections officer believed by investigators to be Noel carrying linen. Okay, well, it must have been Noel carrying linen. But then Noel told investigators that distributing linen was not part of her duties. I never gave out linen, ever, because that's done on a shift prior. So not only do the guards on duty say, nope, absolutely did not carry orange linens up Epstein's stairs, but on top of that, that's done in the shift before. That is not done at 10:40 at night. It's all bullshit. It's bullshit on top of bullshit on top of bullshit to cover up that they probably know who had Epstein killed. I know some people say Epstein is still alive. I think that's unlikely because you even have Epstein's family who disagrees with the autopsy reports, in that the autopsy report acts like it was suicide, and they say actually it shows that it was likely not suicide because the bones in the neck that are generally not broken during the type of hanging this would be, which would be someone like leaning against a rope, not someone dropped from 3 stories up, speaks more to strangulation than a hanging. But it gets crazier. Bonhomme ended his shift at midnight, was replaced by another corrections officer named Michael Thomas. Thomas discovers Epstein's body hours later. Thomas and Noel failed to complete inmate counts at both 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Yeah, why would you? Why would you do your job, right? They also didn't do the 30-minute wellness checks on Epstein they were supposed to do. Thomas and Noel were later charged with falsifying records. Falsifying records. Wonder why they did that. Federal prosecutors eventually dropped the charges in exchange for cooperation. But it sounds like they were already cooperating. So why would you drop the charges? Oh, maybe because they're helping you with the cover-up and you don't want them in prison because then they've got nothing left to lose. If they're already locked up for it, they might as well tell the truth. But if they're free, oh man, do they have a lot to lose. A transcript of Thomas's interview, conducted 2 years after Epstein's death and released in the recent document disclosure, shows significant gaps in his recollection. Now, this is some of my favorite stuff right here. And maybe this has been known. This can go under my new category. How did I miss that? Maybe this has been known for a while. I'm sure people digging into this shit have been talking about it for a while, but unless it was in a recent document. But the idea that there was a mysterious noose that disappeared and is now gone? What? Thomas told investigators he discovered Epstein in his cell shortly after 6:30, or the body of Epstein, 6:30, August 10th, and he, quote, ripped Epstein down from the hanging position. Okay, Epstein ripped down from the hanging position. Now, if you picture that in your mind, what do you picture? You probably picture someone, I don't know, hanging from something, someone connected to something, someone with a thing around their neck. Investigators asked what happened to the noose, whatever was used to hang, whether it was a noose made of fabric, a noose made of shoelaces, what happened to it? He says, I don't recall taking the noose off. I really don't. I don't recall taking the thing from around his neck. So this guy takes Epstein down from hanging and has no recollection as to what he was hanging from. By the way, if someone has hanged themselves, and I'm sorry if this is too graphic, but whatever they had put around their neck would not be easy to get off. It's not like a ribbon on a package. You just pull a little string and no. If they had their body weight on the thing, that thing is tied pretty significantly, meaning it takes an effort. It would take a minute for you to get whatever it is off of them, even maybe with a knife, but he would have remembered taking out a knife, right? And I don't know if it'd be normal for them to have knives, but whatever it was, it would take some doing to get that thing off his neck. This is not your shoelace on your shoe when it's tied for your shoes and you just pull a little string and it's undone. Yay. No, it would have been an ordeal. Noel, who remained standing at the cell entrance, so this is the other CO, told investigators she saw Thomas lower Epstein to the floor. So she's standing there watching it. She did not see a noose around his neck. So she also sees nothing around his neck. Boy, so how could someone die without any noose from something that cut off their airwaves? oh, maybe strangulation, maybe some hands that weren't there anymore. The noose Epstein allegedly used has never been definitively identified. What the fuck? I didn't know. I've joked for whatever it's been 2 years about how he hanged himself with a paper T-shirt or whatever little T-shirt they give you. I'm about to show it in a second, but hanged himself with a T-shirt, which is very difficult to do, which is why they give you those clothes, because they are trying to make it very difficult for someone to take their life. And yet it wasn't even that. It's that he hanged himself with a magical disappearing noose. It was a fairy noose. It came in by the night in the wind, and it hanged him. She says, I don't recall taking the, he said, I don't recall taking the, has never definitively been identified. According to the Inspector General report, a noose collected at the scene was later determined not to be the ligature used in Epstein's death. Now, this raises like dozens of questions. There was a separate noose laying at the scene? What? And then they decided that wasn't the one used? Now, why would that be? My guess is that either someone falsified a document to say, oh, yeah, there was a noose there, to try and explain how this guy had killed himself. Well, you got to have a noose, so we'll just say there was a noose. Or the other option is there was something hanging there, like a shoelace noose or something, and yet it obviously had not been used because maybe it didn't have the proper markings. Maybe his markings on the neck didn't match what was there, what type of noose it was, the width of the string, all those things. So they said, well, we can't say that was used to kill him, or else it's obviously fake. So we'll just say that had nothing to do with it, and we don't know where the noose is. Like, to me, that is the only explanation for why there would be a second noose that had nothing to do with it. The fuck? It's just like, it's just insane after insane of this cover up. It's just pathetic in many ways. Thomas also described Epstein as shirtless when he found him. Evidence records indicate a shirt believed to have been cut off from Epstein's body was later returned from the hospital in a bag of personal belongings. So this guy who can't remember anything, literally can't remember whole hours of the evening, and says he can't remember. He remembers taking Epstein down, but doesn't remember what he took him down from, doesn't remember taking off any kind of noose or hanging device, and now says Epstein was shirtless, yet here is the shirt, which we have a photo of, that was chopped off of Epstein's body. And you can actually, if you look closely, you can see the cuts in the shirt from where they cut it off his body. So, and by the way, if you were to use said T-shirt to try and create something to hang yourself with, it would not be sliced up like that. It would be sliced up into like strips or something. It wouldn't be one cut down the middle, which is what you do when you're at a hospital and you need to get clothes off someone. You do one slice down the middle to take the shirt off. So to me, this is obvious that unless someone faked this shirt, the shirt was cut off his body, probably at the hospital. Anyway, this is just the most, like, it's really kind of a pathetic cover-up in that once you get any of the information, you go, oh, this doesn't add up at all. Yeah, it's just utter horseshit. Like, quickly, you come to that conclusion. And on top of that, in all of these interviews, they're blatantly lying to us. And the blatantly lying to us, it shows two things. One is that it's a cover-up. But two is, why lie to us unless there's something to cover up? Like, the only reason you'd have the FBI, the Justice Department, all of them running around trying desperately to say he killed himself and there's no, Trump had nothing to do with it, is if there is things to cover up. Like, if all the mentions of Trump in the Epstein files were that he used to know him at Mar-a-Lago, like they said, and Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago, basically the story Trump is telling. And yeah, that would still precipitate some mentions in the Epstein files, right? If you used to be friendly with the guy who was at Mar-a-Lago, then you kicked him out, blah, blah, blah. But if that were the case, if that were the reality, why cover anything up? They'd have no reason to cover anything up because it would fit with what Trump had told us. Instead, you have like obvious reasons to cover this up. And I'm going to get to just how many times Trump is mentioned in these files in just a moment. But there is new information. This is as of just a day and a half ago about that missing minute on the video of that evening. You'll recall that there's a famous clip of Kash Patel on Joe Rogan going, we're going to put out the video, or we will try and put out the video of Epstein's cell, showing that no one went in and out. And now we see that someone did go at least in, or up there to his tier. But in that, Kash Patel says, and look, we got to get it right though. If we put it out and there's 4 minutes missing, everybody's going to freak out and say, why are there 4 minutes missing? We got to get it right. And then they put it out and there's literally a minute missing. Literally, it jumps from 11:59 to midnight. So here's the new information on that. Newly released documents show the FBI scrambled to explain last year why it released a screen recording with a missing minute from the night Epstein died instead of the original footage. Last May, as groundswell built, demanding scrutiny, the Justice Department's ran into a problem. It had already destroyed its master copy of surveillance video from Epstein's final hours in the prison, in the jail. And to me, is that not a giant red flag? Why would you destroy that? And this was already, even prior to the current pandemonium around this story, it was already one of the biggest stories in the world. Like 2 or 3 years ago, when Epstein died, it was a major story. And yet they destroyed the master copy. Boy, that doesn't reek of a cover-up. An FBI agent sought and was granted in June 2024 authorization to destroy the evidence labeled as 1B60, describing it as an exhibit no longer pertinent. Because you know how good the FBI is with house cleaning, right? The moment, we're going to go through our literal warehouse of data, information, tapes, files, and just the moment we don't need something, we throw it out. We just burn it immediately. That's how good the FBI is. Or do you think that's bullshit? And they have stuff sitting around in boxes from 1973. That item, 1963, for some odd reason, all of their files, 1963, 1968, those 2 years have just gone up in flames. It was a terrible fire at the warehouse. Just hit 63 and 68. That item, the master copy of Epstein's cell, according to a document among the Epstein files, was the master recording. It had been stored in a Bronx warehouse. By mid-2025, the Justice Department needed the destroyed evidence reconstructed because they were on it, because this Justice Department is fucking on it. You know that. And that launched a complicated scramble to rebuild the video files. The effort involved obtaining another copy of the footage that remained stored across 2 files on a Nice Vision digital video recorder, the system used in the jail. One of the video files started at 7:40 p.m. The other starts at midnight and ended at 6:40 a.m. An agent used it. So then in 2025, an agent used a screen capture tool to re-record the footage from Nice Vision. But 62 seconds of the footage couldn't be captured. Isn't that funny? Couldn't get those 62 seconds. 62 seconds of the footage couldn't be captured, leaving a gap from 11:58 and 58 seconds until midnight. Members of the public noticed that it jumped from 11:59 to midnight, rather than explain that the footage had been pieced together. So here's what I believe is actually this, like what we're being told here in this CBS reporting is probably a limited hangout. It may be all they know, but I think whoever they got the information from, this is false information to some degree. That they're acting like Attorney General Pam Bondi when she was asked about this missing minute. You may recall that they all said, FBI, all of them said, oh, that's just a standard thing with all of the videotapes at this prison. They all need time to imprint or, record or download these tapes. And so it all happens at 11:59 for 1 minute until midnight. Always does that. Yeah, not true at all. And so CBS News is acting like Pam Bondi just someone said that to her and she ran with it. What do you want to bet? They knew exactly why this minute was missing, and they just came up with a bullshit story. This CBS reporting says it appears Bondi had accepted a speculative conclusion that summarized by the section chief that the system reset nightly, losing a minute. But experts told CBS in July that the time delay theory was implausible. None of the security system specialists that CBS News spoke with had heard of a system that has that issue. So literally there are no systems used in our prisons that need 1 minute to download their shit every night. That's not a thing. And yet they just ran with this. Was the story. You remember there was a week where this was the story. They all need a minute. They love that minute. They all need a minute to, not to mention, once word of that got out, what do you want to bet every prison, all of their killings and drug deals would happen from 11:59 to midnight? An FBI specialist tried to merge the screen recordings using Adobe Premiere, but he couldn't do it. And so he used another thing and back to temple 2. And so when Wire reported that 2 minutes and 53 seconds had been cut out, it actually was only 1 minute still, because the 253 was because they had padding on one of these things in order to. And anyway, with all of this explanation, it still doesn't explain why there was a missing minute. It doesn't. It just, like, it tries to say, like, oh, they needed to recreate it because they had destroyed the video. You're just digging yourselves deeper. You're not actually answering the questions. And anyway, I told you we'd get back to just how many times Trump is mentioned in these Epstein files. We have heard the number 38,000 thrown around a lot. People say Trump is in the Epstein files 38,000 times, but it's actually worse than that. Hold on. Let me pull up the right one here. Jamie Raskin, and the Congressman Jamie Raskin, has said that his name reportedly appears in the unredacted files at least 1 million times. 1 million times in the Epstein files. And it's either Trump, Mar-a-Lago, or I think Melania, if you add them all up. 1 million times. And that means that if the times Trump appears in the redacted versions that we see and that people can go search, I guess right now you can go search them. If you get 38,000, that's just the number they have unredacted. So that means the Justice Department has redacted like 90% of all mentions of Trump. Trump has maintained that he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago when he was continually poaching staff from the spa, including 16-year-old Virginia Giuffre, who was unalived, much like Epstein, last year. And Raskin said that there's a document within the files saying that Trump never did ban Epstein from Mar-a-Lago, according to a 2009 email exchange between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. If Raskin's search is accurate, then it means that the Department of Justice has redacted, 96% of the mentions of Trump. I said 90%. They've actually redacted 96% of every time Trump is mentioned in those files. And what are those mentions in those millions of mentions? Well, here's Congressman Ted Lieu talking about what exactly they say.
So why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump.
And by the way, I don't like that he, for some reason, starts off by acting like this is Bill Clinton is used as a distraction. Bill Clinton is clearly one of these predators. So it's weird to be like, let's ignore one predator and focus on the other. How about we focus on both? How about we focus on all these fucking shit-stained parasite predators? How about that? Could we do that? Can we walk and chew gum about sexual predators at the same time, about pedophiles at the same time?
From the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage the press to go look at these allegations And I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said essentially that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that's actually not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're guilty, because patronizing is part of the law, the federal sex trafficking law. So Deputy General Todd Blanche just got that wrong, which maybe explains why they aren't investigating all these folks, including Donald Trump.
So, yeah, another good point there made at the end. But yeah, it's not like these mentions are all just soft mentions this million times in the Epstein files. It is accusations of things that I can't repeat or I'll be demonetized. Probably already have been demonetized on this live stream. So, but here's another, just to again clarify just how aggressive this cover up is by, and you know, it's like, hold on a second. It's like if the Democrats were in power, they'd probably be trying to cover up some of Bill Clinton's stuff. But the difference is that the Democratic president, who is heavily mentioned in these files and implicated, he's a past president by many, many years. Whereas with Trump, you've got the current president. So there's a big difference there. And let's also remember that Clinton was impeached. Yes, he did not leave office, but he was impeached for having a consensual relationship with a not underage girl. Now, we can all talk about how gross it was to use your power that way. You know, Lewinsky has spoken out about it many, many times since then. That's fine. But a consensual relationship with a girl that is not being trafficked and is not underage is way different than what Trump may have been involved in. If you look at if you go by the mentions in these files, and at minimum, he's trying to cover up what these people were involved in. But so what I was going to say is to show just how aggressive this cover up is. This is a photo from Pam Bondi's hearing the other day, where they asked all the survivors, the victims that were there in attendance, to stand up, and they did. And then they were asked, how many of you have not been approached by the Justice Department to give your story, to give your testimony about who abused you, who assaulted you in Epstein's circle? All of them raised their hand. And then it was, how many of you have reached out to the Justice Department to try and give your testimony? And all of them raised their hand. So the Justice Department has zero interest in any accountability for what has gone on with Epstein and the entire circle that involves so many disgusting parasites, including Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, by the way, getting more and more implicated as people go through these files. Elon Musk's brother, as I covered on the last live stream, Donald Trump, Woody Allen, there's a shocker, Bill Gates. Those are the biggest ones. We did discuss Chomsky the other day on the live stream, and you know, I agree with Hedges' analysis. That is, Chomsky at minimum knew what Epstein had done in 2008 and looked the other way because he wanted access. Chomsky enjoyed, and his wife enjoyed, the high level access to world leaders and private jets to some degree. And anyway, it's all repulsive. None of these people are facing any accountability. And, you know, some of this stuff is getting some mainstream coverage. Some aspects of it are getting almost no mainstream coverage. I covered one of the biggest things that gets zero mainstream coverage, which has to do with the fact that this is not unusual for the ruling elite because we live in a socioeconomic system that specifically rewards sociopaths, puts sociopaths at the top of our system. So we are led by sociopaths. So that's how you end up with so many of these sociopaths being involved in this kind of horrific shit because they are sociopaths. There is a connection here between this and the socioeconomic system we have and capitalism. And anyway, all of that's at realleecamp.substack.com. I want to get on to more stuff, including the more unhinged shit from RFK Jr. Real quick, I want to say, if you want to see my show continue and you like what I do, please join up at realleecamp.substack.com. It's a whopping $7 a month if you sign up for a year, or $8 if you do the monthly. And it really keeps the show going. As you can imagine, I make like $0 from ads. I have no corporate sponsors. I have no billionaire friends because of the shit I'm saying. So it comes down to you guys, and I hope you think it's worth it to keep this show going, to keep my work going. Would be amazing if you can join up. realleecamp.substack.com. Another place to join up is patreon.com/LeeCamp. And then a third place would be leecamp.net, my locals page. That's more if you want a community, if you want to hang out with amazing people and post your own stuff. That's leecamp.net, which is my locals page. But and as long as I'm talking about this, I also just put up a new column yesterday about how exactly Trump is fast-tracking the end of the U.S. empire. And most people have not noticed. And I'm not going to get into it here, but I think you should check it out. It has to do with the way portions of the world are circling the wagons and cutting at least some ties from the U.S. empire. And you'll see what I'm talking about. And no, I'm not saying it would be a bad thing for the U.S. empire to stop being an empire and instead focus on cooperation with other nations, focus on facilitating a future where, I don't know, we all still get to exist. Wouldn't that be rad? So check that out. That's at realleecamp.substack.com. And these are all free to read, but it would be amazing if you become a paying member. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, I didn't even know we got an awesome super chat here. Thank you, Plant Rocker. Yeah, Plant Rocker says Chomsky is an example of how it takes decades to build a reputation and 5 minutes to lose it. Yeah, you do certain things, you can definitely lose it quickly. All right. Let's keep moving here. I want it now. Here's part of the thing with RFK Jr. For those of you who've heard me mention RFK Jr. before, I have talked about the fact that he says if you look at like some of the broader things he has said in the past, some of them are things that we should kind of celebrate if you look at them in a broad way and don't actually look at his specifics. Fucking big ag is a parasite and a stain on our, I'm parasiting. I'm parasiting. I mean, I guess I am if you spell citing like that, but I am parasiting. I'm paraphrasing. But he's gone after big ag. But then when he actually gets into this position, he's kind of done nothing against big ag except tell people, hey, you should eat apples. And so he's just like a pawn of big ag now. So there are some in the broader sense. But then when you look at like individually what he's saying, and of course he's like more right-wing on Israel than Netanyahu. Like he has said some of the most horrific shit supporting Israel's genocide. Look it up if you want to. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to use this as an example of what RFK does a lot of. And we're just going to look at this one example. And it tells you a lot about whether RFK is genuine and should be believed or is running fast and loose with the truth.
Dr. Pollan up at Harvard has cured schizophrenia using keto diets.
Now, just remember that. Remember that sentence. Dr. Pollan up at Harvard has cured, and he nails the word cured. He sits on it. Has cured schizophrenia using the keto diet. I'm going to play it again, and then I'll finish the clip.
Dr. Pollan up at Harvard has cured schizophrenia using keto diets. There are studies right now that I saw 2 days ago where people lose their bipolar diagnosis by changing their diet. It's not only affecting our physical health, it's affecting our mental health as well. And
So here's the thing. If you take a portion of that, like shifting your diet can be important to you or important to someone. If you just take that kind of vague idea, great. I'm all for it. I don't eat garbage fast food. I don't think people should eat garbage fast food. I think people should eat more healthy so they're functioning better and they're healthier. Absolutely. But when you look at the specifics of what this lunatic says, it's unbelievable. Like, how do you get in front of a group of people and say these things? And I'll get into the details in a second. But let's talk about that first sentence. Dr. Pollen up at Harvard has cured schizophrenia with keto diet. Let's take each portion of this sentence and look at some of the reality behind it. This is from Scientific American. And just to clarify, a person eating a ketogenic diet typically gets at least 70% of their calories from fat and 20% from protein and as little from carbohydrates as possible. Okay, so that's what a keto diet is. Kennedy mentioned a Dr. Pollen at Harvard. There appears to be no such person there or elsewhere who has studied the keto diet and its effect on schizophrenia. Now, before you go, oh my God, he just made up the entire thing, there is a doctor that almost has the name Dr. Pollen, so we'll just pretend that RFK got the name wrong. Dr. Christopher Paul, he's not a doctor, he's a professor. So he also added doctor to his name. So Christopher Palmer, a professor of psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. Okay, so let's give him benefit of the doubt. Got a name wrong. Big deal. But let's keep going. Here's what Christopher Palmer says about his studies on keto diet. While I appreciate the secretary's enthusiasm for my research, I have never claimed to cure schizophrenia, and I have never used the word cure in any of my talks or any of my research. So RFK Jr. made up the word cure in order to make it sound better than it is. Palmer co-authored, so here's the reality of it. This is the seed of truth that RFK Jr. used to create kind of a ridiculous wonderland. Palmer co-authored a 2025 study that reviewed the evidence for the ketogenic diet as a possible treatment for schizophrenia, to help with schizophrenia. It found that small pilot studies suggested that the diet may improve some symptoms of the disorder for some people. But Palmer emphasizes that other people with the condition may not see any improvement with the keto diet. But this is a world of difference. Curing schizophrenia would be fucking groundbreaking for people that face it. And I think most of you know, schizophrenia, it'll destroy your life. I mean, people that are schizophrenic sometimes end up homeless. Sometimes end up doing horrible things. It sounds like a real awful curse. Like you could have, and it often begins to represent itself in the later teen years and early 20s. So you could be living a awesome, bright future, and all of a sudden your brain starts malfunctioning in a way that makes it nearly impossible if it's a extreme case of schizophrenia, nearly impossible to function in our society, like to do well in life and have a family and have a love life and make money in order to survive. Like all those things can be thrown out the window. And here is RFK Jr. saying, yeah, they cured it. Keto diet. Done. Switch to fats and protein. Take out a charcuterie board and you'll be fine. But in fact, it's some symptoms. Some of the issues could be decreased for some people by eating a diet high in fats and proteins. It is like the amount of difference in a medical sense and in a reality sense of those two statements is massive. And for people who have a schizophrenic family member or care for schizophrenic people, or hell, there are people who have faced schizophrenia, like a kind of lower level of it, and are doing well with various kinds of pharmaceuticals, because right now for antipsychotics it can be really important. They could hear this and go, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And some of them could hear it and throw their antipsychotics out the window and start eating some steaks for lunch. And then, oh, what do you know? Their life can be really destroyed. And I have a good friend who, not schizophrenic, but has had extreme manic episodes. And if he were to, back in a certain day when things were not going as well for him, if he were to hear something like this, he very well may take it up as, like, at that time, I'm talking years ago, at that time, very well may have taken it up as like, oh, look at that. I can eat steaks and I'm going to be fine. And like, a manic episode can last months. Like, you have no idea how awful someone's life can be if they're stuck in a manic episode and they're unable to get the help they need, get the medications they need. Thank you, Momo, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. And it's just like these type of statements to just run fast and loose with reality like that are like so harmful and so painful. And I can't imagine, like, I'm horrified when I say something that's like blatantly wrong, and it doesn't happen that often. I remember a couple of months ago, I got the name of a guy wrong, and I had conflated two people in my head and told you guys it was one. And then the next episode I came on, I said, I can't remember who it was. And said, I got that name wrong. Really sorry about that. Here's who I meant to say. It's like, I occasionally, when you do as much content as I do, it's bound to happen at some point. Occasionally that happens. I am horrified. I cannot imagine getting up in the Oval Office. Do you remember? I covered it on this live stream. Do you remember whatever it was, a month ago, 2 months ago? They did a big Oval Office presentation where they said Tylenol. Really, they meant acetaminophen, but Trump couldn't pronounce it, so they just picked one brand. They said Tylenol causes autism. And then the whole medical community flipped the fuck out. And then they were probably going to get sued into oblivion by Tylenol. I don't know what pressured them to do it. But then they came out and said, oh, never mind. Never mind. You just did a whole Oval Office presentation. You had like a quinceañera banner up. You were in your finest dresses, dancing around, saying Tylenol causes autism. And now, never mind. Like, I can't imagine being willing to be so fucking awful. Like, why would you just say that unless you had the most crazy proof of all proof? It like, yeah, go back. For those of you who didn't follow, like, a lot of people saw that Oval Office presentation and said, oh, Tylenol during pregnancy or whenever you're giving birth causes autism. Oh my God. And no many people saw, so many people didn't see the follow-up. Go Google the follow-up. Where, like, whatever it was, a week later, 2 weeks later, they put out a statement saying, there's some evidence showing something, maybe. Like, holy shit. And let's see, this is, yeah, and well, I'll get to another aspect of this in a second. Let me just give you one more thing. This is from New York Times, and I know New York Times is garbage on so many things, but the theme running through much of Kennedy's unsubstantiated health advice is that a dazzling rainbow of diseases could be cured simply through hard exercise and eating a better diet. The implication being that all of us can bootstrap our way to good health. That was certainly what was suggested by the Make America Healthy Again Super Bowl ad, with Mike Tyson imploring Americans to eat apples instead of ice cream. Can you guys answer me this? Why is it these goons, and I just mean ruling elite, Donald Trump, all of them, why is it these goons search far and wide whenever they're going to do a project that's going to be seen by a lot of America, I mean, this is a fucking Super Bowl ad, they search far and wide for either a rapist or a sexual predator to do it. Isn't that crazy? Why is that? Like, you couldn't find anyone who literally hasn't been convicted of rape? Mike Tyson, yes, very adorable these days. Great in The Hangover. God, he was good in The Hangover. I love that movie. Doesn't matter. Still, convicted rapist. Could you not find anyone? Has there not been an athlete since Mike Tyson that isn't convicted of R-wording? No, no one. And Melania's documentary, directed by sexual predator, directed by someone photographed with victims in the Epstein files. He's sitting there on the bed with like, you couldn't find a director who hadn't been drummed out of Hollywood for being a sexual predator. Doesn't exist. Not one. Seriously. Like, what? It's like these people want us to know that these are the circles we hang in. With the people we hang around, we couldn't find anybody who's not a sexual predator. They just don't exist. Really, you had to pick Mike Tyson. But that aside, I heard an interesting point about a lot of this advice and the things RFK Jr. and his groups and Trump have been saying. And for one thing, they describe autism like it is a destroyed human being. And I have seen a lot of videos with parents who have autistic kids, and there are different levels of autism. There are levels of autism where people are, fully functioning, have a job, etc. And then there are levels of autism where they're not functioning in the way you or I would deem normal for our society at all. But many of these parents are like, why do they talk about them like they're like dead, like they're non-humans? Like they're always described as like the light left their eyes and my child was gone. And then you start to like add it up, and there's a real eugenics vibe of a lot of this stuff. Because it really is like, if you just start eating better and we let all this stuff run wild, we let all these diseases run wild. And look, there are issues with certain vaccines, and certain ways that it's done. And no one's gone after big pharma more than I have, but there's also a lot of vaccines that are pretty important. And they seem to want to, and we're seeing measles outbreaks and starting, and they've found polio in the water, and there are vaccines that have been around for decades and are really important and are the reason a lot of us are alive. So, and these people act like if we just start eating right and let those things kill the people they're going to kill, then all is fine. There's a real eugenics, like, let's weed out the ones who aren't healthy, which, by the way, is about 90% of Americans. Let's weed out all the ones who aren't healthy, and we'll and get rid of them, throw away those people, and then we can have all the healthy Nazi youth as our population. If you kind of follow the thread, it really does come from that kind of stuff. Real horrific history here of like, just let it run wild. Just see what happens. Just let it kill who it's going to kill. That was the other thing that I always found kind of disgusting is like, I'm fine with people asking questions. I think people should ask questions about their body and their health and all those things. But some people would go, I'm forgetting the term now, which I can't remember the term, but basically pre-existing conditions. Like when someone can tell me the term. It's an easy term that I'm forgetting, but another factor that caused you to be more likely to die from COVID, a pre-existing condition such as obesity or such as old age, and people would go, oh yeah, but so-and-so died of COVID and he was 43 or whatever. And they go, oh yeah, but he was obese. He had comorbidity. Thank you. He had comorbidity. Oh, so we're just fine with all the obese people dying? We're just, by the way, if you look at the current measures, it's like 70% of Americans are obese. But are we just saying that? Are we saying if someone's overweight, they should die? We're just cool with that now? Because that seemed to be the implication. Was like, oh no, they had another thing. They grew up with asthma. Oh, okay. So we can weed out all the. So if you see someone with asthma, just fucking beat them in the head with a shovel, take them out. Don't need them. Like, if someone has a comorbidity, we're just okay with all of them dying. That's horrific. What kind of world do you want? That's just fucking disgusting. Okay, I have some other stories I have to get to before this live stream ends. So I'm going to jump around here rather quickly because I don't want to miss all of these. So I'm just going to kind of plow through. Please, everybody, sign up at leecamp.substack.com. And also, there was no Unredacted tonight last night. You might have noticed. That was our week off. And we do about like 5 weeks on, 1 week off. So there'll be a new Unredacted next week. Okay, so for one thing, the UK ban on Palestine Action, which is this awesome group that has been doing great activism against Israel and against things like Elbit Systems, weapons contracts for Israel. They were ruled as like illegal and as a terrorist organization by the UK. And anyway, a top court has ruled that ruling unlawful. Trump is launching, he's unveiling his multi-billion-dollar reconstruction fund for the Gaza Strip and will outline plans for the United Nations authorized International Stabilization Force at the first formal meeting of his Board of Peace on February 19th in Washington, D.C. This is the pro-ethnic cleansing, we'll complete the ethnic cleansing so Israel doesn't have to group. It also, by the way, the Board of Peace has nothing in its charter about Gaza because this is Trump. He believes he's going to basically replace the United Nations with his Board of Peace, which he is the king of, and literally in the bylaws cannot be removed unless the entire board, including his son-in-law, votes to have him removed, which would never happen. So basically, Trump's king of this thing forever. And in his view, it will replace the UN and Trump will be king of the new UN forever. Whistleblower, and that's not everything that's horrific about this stabilization force, etc. There's absolutely no Palestinian voice in any of this. The Palestinians that they might consult with are like billionaires that pretend to care about Palestinians. There's no Palestinian voice in any of this. It is straight up ethnic cleansing. Whistleblowers told another story. Whistleblowers told the Electronic Intifada that the Committee to Protect Journalists. Okay, Committee to Protect Journalists. Great outfit, right? Always protects journalists. Awesome. Well, here's what they're doing. Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, scrapped its annual impunity against killing journalists, right? Against stopping journalists. This is basically their impunity index lists the countries that are the most horrific to journalists. They got rid of that index, which had been published every year since 2008, because Israel was going to be number one again, or whatever. They were number 2 last year. So the impunity index references UN reports, measures countries where journalists are deliberately killed and killers go unpunished. This sounds like a pretty important index, a pretty important list for the Committee to Protect Journalists. Well, they're getting rid of it. The 2024 edition, covering killings through 2023, ranked Israel as second. The 2025 index, reflecting 2024 amid record killings of Palestinian journalists, would have put Israel in the top of the list. Since the index is calculated as a 10-year rolling rate relative to population, Israel would have ranked near the top, if not number 1, for many years to come. So the Committee to Protect Journalists is throwing out their list of countries that do not protect journalists or kill journalists, because Israel would be the champion of that list for like years to come. Moving on, Western governments move to oust UN rapporteur Francesca Albanese. I just covered her the other day. France, Germany, Italy, and the United States have escalated their calls for the removal of UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, falsely accusing her of calling Israel the common enemy of humanity. They're getting rid of her for standing up against genocide. Like, if you know anything she's done, she has been steadfast in standing up against Israel's genocide in Gaza. And so they are doing everything they can to destroy her life and to oust her from the UN. President Donald Trump announced I accidentally say chump, and it really is better. Announced on Thursday the repeal of the federal endangerment finding, the scientific determination that greenhouse gas emissions threaten public health and the environment. The repeal effectively strips the EPA of its authority to regulate carbon dioxide, methane, and other forms of pollution responsible for climate change. 99.9% of peer-reviewed studies, academic studies, show that climate change is happening and is created or facilitated by mankind, humankind. The finding, first issued in 2009, the endangerment finding, made it possible to impose limits on pollution for vehicles, power plants, oil and gas operations. The repeal is expected to trigger major legal challenges. And finally, a report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that 90% of the costs of the tariffs that Trump has implemented are put on American citizens. So, guys, I ask you, I'll put it to you. Have you noticed that prices are going up? Have you noticed that anywhere? Prices of food, prices of products, prices of cars, all these things. Have you noticed that any of that's going up? If so, you have Trump's tariffs to thank. I know he and his goons have celebrated it as making so much money for America. But in fact, what companies do, so you got a foreign company, right? They sell, let's say, car parts or import car parts to the United States. And they sell it to, let's say, one of the car companies here in the United States, Ford or something. That company that makes those car parts, all of a sudden they have to pay some crazy tariff, right? Because they're from a country that Trump's trying to fuck. So the tariff is now 50%. So this car part that used to be $10 is now $15. Almost that entire increase, the $5, is not paid by that company. Instead, they just increase the price to pay the $5, and Ford then has to import it at a higher price, so $15 instead of $10. And then what does Ford do? They go, shit, this stuff's costing us more. Put that on the consumer. So the consumer is paying, the American consumer is paying 90% of the cost of these tariffs. In case you were wondering how much that's helping you and me and why things seem to be a little more expensive recently, I'll give you one more story because it's hilarious. Really is the gang who couldn't shoot straight running this country. The Border Patrol shot down. Well, this title doesn't really do it justice. The Border Patrol used a new laser technology to shoot down what they thought was a drone in El Paso, causing El Paso airspace to be shut down and El Paso airport to be shut down. These are major ramifications, right? Turned out it was a party balloon. Boy, we have a history of freaking out about balloons. Do you remember when we freaked out about the Chinese weather balloon? Not only did we freak out about the Chinese weather balloon and shoot it with a Sidewinder missile that cost like $1 million, we then shot down another balloon. You remember that same couple weeks where we were freaking out about Chinese balloons? We shot down another balloon that was over the Dakotas or Wyoming or something. Turned out that balloon was a science experiment from a high school class balloon that had also been shot down with a Sidewinder missile. We are horrified by balloons. Balloons be fucking with us, man. They be coming after us. Goddamn balloons. The sudden closure of El Paso's airspace Wednesday came sometime after Customs and Border Patrol officials used an anti-drone laser that was provided by the military to shoot down objects that were later identified as party balloons. We are killing it. And by it, I mean balloons. We are just outstanding. I mean, our military, second to none. You try, if you're a balloon and you try and come into our airspace, we will fuck you up, man. Just go ahead. Give it a try. Give it a try, balloons. Balloons anywhere. Come one, come all. We're going to take you all on. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap up there with a little levity. But I will be back Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I do these 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Wednesdays, every other week, is Government Secrets. But yeah, this is also a podcast. It's called Moment of Clarity on most platforms, called Lee Camp Show on Spotify. And I also have another podcast, Government Secrets, and another podcast, Common Censored. So check all those out. But I'd really love for you to sign up at reallycamp.substack.com. Either sign up for free or become a paying member. I will see you Monday. Keep fighting.